Hello and welcome back to Triple Crown Wargaming with me, the Duke, once again. And today I am taking a look at the shooting phase in Warhammer, the old world. Once again, got my big blue book with me, and we're going to take a look at the few pages that cover the rules for the shooting phase. If you haven't checked out the two videos already out, if you're watching this at the time of recording, anyway, the strategy phase and the movement phase, we've already looked at those. Head back to those, check those out first, and then come back here and watch this one. But like all the other phases, it has 4 sub-phases. Now, these are, to be honest, less sub-phases and more of just a sequence of things you do in the shooting phase. So you basically repeat these stages for each unit. You pick a unit, declare their target, roll to hit, roll to wound, make their saves, remove the casualties, take any panic tests, go back to the first step. So not really sub-phases, but they've helpfully split it out into 4 sections just for a bit of consistency, I suppose. As ever, I'm not going to look at everything in the shooting phase. I'm just really going to focus on changes from 8th edition. So the first big change really is thanks to this who can shoot little list of things that if you've done, you can't shoot. Obviously, if you're charged, you can't. If you're engaged in combat, you can't. If you're fleeing, you can't. All those make sense. If you marched, you can't. So that generally was a rule in 8th edition, but the skirmishers and the fast cavalry rules in 8th edition allowed you to march and shoot. However, very clear in the old world, you cannot march and shoot. No exceptions to that I've found so far anyway. The next big change is line of sight. Now, they don't specifically go over the rules for line of sight here, but essentially what it is, it's not true line of sight. So 8th edition was true line of sight. Yeah, I can understand how that can be a bit annoying sometimes. You got to get down, bend right down, try and see from the model's perspective. Sometimes you just can't. It's just not possible. There's stuff in the way. They're on a really awkward bit of the table. You just can't do it. I understand. But so what they've changed line of sight to is you have to draw an unobstructed line from your model that is trying to get line of sight to what they are trying to see. If that line passes over any part of another model or any terrain, you do not have line of sight. If you cannot draw an unobstructed line from one part of your model to one part of their model, you do not have line of sight. Now, you can just see a slither. If you can just draw a line to a slither of their model or their base, that's fine. You've got line of sight. As we'll get into later, they'll be in cover, but that's fine. You've got line of sight. If you can't draw any unobstructed line at all, you do not have line of sight. Big change there. The rest of this sort of step, no real changes, to be honest, at all. Just goes over declaring a target, checking range, things like that. Moving on then, again, the hit rolls haven't changed at all. We've still got to hit modifiers like we've had before, moving and shooting at long range, standing and shooting. The cover is slightly different. So you've got targets behind partial cover, which is a -1, so the same as what soft cover used to be. And then targets behind full cover, or what hard cover used to be, at -2. What it describes, I think actually this describes it in a much better way than 8th edition ever did. So if up to half of the target model or up to half of the target models within the unit, if you're shooting at a unit, are obscured by terrain or other models, then they're in partial cover and the model shooting at them will suffer a -1 to hit. If more than half of the model or if more than half of the models within a unit are obscured by terrain or other models, then they're in full cover and it's -2. I think that makes it much easier, to be honest, than what 8th edition was. Yeah, big fan of how they've changed that. You'll notice, or you may notice here, that there's no modifier for shooting at skirmishers. That is still in, it's just under the skirmishers rule, so this isn't a completely exhaustive list of the to-hit modifiers. One other change they have here, though, is for standing and shooting. So if you make a stand and shoot, you're at -1 to hit, standard. However, you do not also suffer the -1 for firing at long range if you're making a stand and shoot. So I quite like that, to be honest. I think that's made that significantly better, I've got to say. Yeah, big fan of that, because often you would be shooting at long range, which would mean you just would never really hit. And I mean, shooting generally doesn't do too much in fantasy. It hasn't done in 8th edition. I don't think it's going to change massively, or that's going to change massively in the old world, but we're yet to see. I could be wrong. So, you know, cutting out even more of the hits on a stand and shoot, which feels like very much a last-ditch effort, just felt a little bit harsh. And actually we sort of incorporated a ignoring long range mechanic into our last, I think it was our last, narrative pack. No, second to last narrative pack that we did for 8th edition, which was the Sundering of Athel Loren. The Empire army in there could ignore long range. And actually it made them significantly better. Not, overpowered, not broken, just significantly better. So I really like what they've done there with that mechanic for standing and shooting. All of this section is the same, to be honest with you. Rolling to wound, I say it's all the same. The wound table is different, so in a very real sense, I'm completely wrong. The wound chart, to be fair, is very different. So as you can see up here in the top right, there are certain toughnesses at which point a strength will not be able to wound them. You don't just wound everything on a 6 now. So if you're strength 4, you cannot wound something that's toughness 10. Now, I'll be honest, I can't think of something that is in the game at the minute that's toughness 10. Oh, that's a lie, there's a dwarf rune. But other than that, I can't think of anything that's toughness 10. So this isn't going to come up much for strength 4. Strength 3, 9 or 10, strength 2, 8, 9 or 10, and strength 1, toughness 7, 8, 9 or 10, you cannot wound. Conversely, going sort of back the other way, if you are the same strength as their toughness, then it's 4s, no surprise there. If you are 1 higher, then it is 3s to wound. And if you are 2 or more higher, then it's 2s to wound. If you are 1 lower strength, then it's 5s to wound. If you are 2 or more lower strength, then it's 6s to wound. As to I say, up to that limit of, what would that be, 5 higher? Yeah, 5 higher. If their toughness is 5 higher, you can wound them. If their toughness is 6 or more higher, you can't wound them. So, yeah, in a very real sense, I did lie there. There is a big change in the to wound rolls. Armor save. Now, obviously, the armor save itself is the same. I'm not sure if it says here, actually, but actually, armor saves are capped at 2+, not 1+, like they were in 8th edition. Again, I'm just lying to you. There are changes. Armor saves are capped at 2+. And armor piercing works very differently. This is a big change. So no longer does the strength of the weapon or the attack affect how much armor it breaks through. So in 8th edition, for every strength you were above 3, you took 1 point off of their armor. So strength 4 took 1 point off, strength 5, 2 points, etc. Now, armor piercing is just a completely separate stat, which I'm sure you'll have seen on multiple weapon profiles that Games Workshop showed off to us in the run-up to the old world. So you'll have the strength of the weapon and an AP characteristic of -1 or -2, something like that. There are also special rules which affect it. Armor Bane, for instance, which is on a roll of a 6 to wound, you're an additional, whatever it is in the bracket, normally 1 AP. So that's how you affect armor saves now. Ward saves are exactly the same, and you still get armor and ward, and they don't actually mention it here, but you also now get regeneration after your ward save, so it's possible for you to have 3 saves. So that's another little bit of a change there. Removing casualties, no difference there. Panic test, there is a slight difference here. So you take the panic test if you suffer 25% or more casualties from the models that were in that unit at the start of the shooting phase in a phase. So if it's not how many you start the game with, it's how many you start that phase with. Then it's got to be 25% or more of them, then you take a panic test. So leadership test as normal, no difference in that test. However, what you do if you fail that test depends on how many models in your unit you have got left compared to what you started the game with. So if you've got if you've just got over half of the models that you started the game with still in your unit, then you fall back in good order. So if you check back to yesterday's movement phase video, you'll know that a fall back in good order is essentially a flee move. However, you roll 2d6 and pick the highest for how far you move, and then you immediately rally at the end of it. So you're not just going to run off if after one failed panic test on turn 1, you're very likely to just keep running off the board. However, if you contain half or less than half of the models that you started the game with and fail the panic test, then you do just flee as per normal. Pivot on the spot away from what caused the flee, and then roll 2d6. That's how far you go. You can still only take one panic test per shooting phase, no difference there. Magic missiles and magical vortex spells. So these are the spells that you do in the shooting phase. So these are done basically as if you are shooting with that unit, or with that wizard, effectively. So I wonder if that means if a wizard's in a unit, you would pick the unit as a whole, and so when the unit shoots, you have to choose the wizard as well? That's an interesting one. Yeah, very interesting, because by those rules, it does appear that way, and by those rules, they would have to target the same unit that their unit is shooting at if your wizard is in a ranged unit. That's an interesting one for the FAQ, isn't it? Let me know what you think down below, if you think that that's how they intended for that to work, or if that's how the rules appear to you as well. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Anyway, assume he's not, or she is not, in a ranged unit, then you pick them as if they're a shooting unit, pick their targets, etc. Exactly the same as if they had a missile weapon. Which means you can't march and cast magic missiles or magical vortex spells. You have to only have moved. So a big change there, very big change, particularly for flying or just generally quick wizards. No more, flying over 20 inches and then no more dropping a purple sun, because that's not a thing anymore. But, no more flying up 20 inches and zapping something with a magical missile. No, you can only move and cast those sorts of spells now. Obviously, you can't shoot into combat, except in very rare cases. When templates scatter onto you, for instance, you will hit combat. And now another big change for shooting, only one rank of models can shoot. Generally, anyway. There are exceptions, like if you're on a hill, then 2 ranks can shoot. Or if you've got the volley fire special rule, which does the same thing as it did in 8th. So up to half of the models in each rank after the first can also shoot, rounding up. But yeah, big change that generally only the front rank can shoot. And like I was saying earlier, shooting generally doesn't do, huge amounts of damage. Some war machines will sometimes, although war machines generally, I think, will do a little bit less in the old world than they did in 8th. That could well be a good thing for you, maybe a bad thing. I think that's a very personal decision or opinion. But yeah, the fact that now only one rank can shoot, I think, to be honest, just means shooting units do even less. And I'm not sure that's a great thing. But like I said, we're yet to see. We've got to let the game settle first, to be honest. A lot of new people are going to be playing it. It's going to be new to basically everyone who had got the rules on the weekend just gone. If you're watching this at time of release, it's new to us. It's new. It's a new set of rules to get our heads around and get that meta, to use the word that, that horrible word that no one seems to like online, to get the meta to settle into what is good, what is not necessarily competitive, but to what works. That has to settle before anyone really can make any sort of sweeping judgments. But back to the shooting rules, there's nothing else really changed in sort of the rest of this page. Some stuff you get instant killed still, particularly killing below if you're infantry or cavalry, and unless it specifies otherwise, you just don't get a save when it says remove a casualty. No change there. Hits that do multiple wounds, no change there. You can't, if a cannon does D3 plus 1 wounds, which the Empire ones do, I believe, and you shoot, a 1 wound Bretonian peasant, because I'm looking at them on my painting table, you don't, and roll like a 3 on the D3, you don't kill 4 peasants, you still just kill the 1 peasant. No change there. And some stuff automatically hits, not a lot of it, but some stuff will automatically hit. So again, no changes there. And those generally are the rules for shooting and the shooting phase in the old world. Let me know what you think about that. Wizards and magic missiles / magical vortex spells. If they're in a ranged unit, do they have to target the same unit that their unit shoots, if their unit shoots, or not? Or can they be chosen at a different time? Because to me, it sounds like you would have to target the same thing. I'm just going to double check. There's no sort of clarification here about wizard. No, not at all. So I think rules as written, you would, if your, Empire wizard is in a unit of crossbows, for instance, then the wizard would have to both be chosen at the same time the crossbows are chosen to cast his spells, if he's got any that are magical missiles or magical vortexes, and they would have to target the same unit that the crossbowmen target. Makes you think about not putting wizards in ranged units, doesn't it, really? But like I say, let me know what you think about that down below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little bell, that little notification bell, so that we can let you know when we post tomorrow's video, which will be on the combat phase. And you can check out all of our other videos while you're over on our page. But thank you for joining me today, and I will see you tomorrow.
Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright?